Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for us to get together with all of you and certainly to um, get through some of these things that are going on in the earth right now. And I do believe there's a number of things that we do need to be aware of. Unfortunately, we've turned a corner into some pretty troublous and difficult times. And so I think that this warrants that we, again, be very sober and vigilant in this hour. And that's why we do these weekly news updates, because when things do turn and they are becoming more serious, well, then, we can stay informed without being overwhelmed. We like to take that 10,000-foot view. And that's kind of something we like to say around here for all of you that are joining us maybe for the first time. And if you are joining us for the first time, we certainly love to encourage you to check out our website at remnantwatch.com. That's remnantwatch.com, where you're going to find all the stories that we cover. And you'll also find this handy search bar. Don't forget the free survival guide materials. And the search bar is great when you're going back trying to, take a look at stories that we've already covered and perhaps a trend, something that is now starting to become something that we're looking at is just different trends, right? So different things that have happened and continue to happen, almost like on a schedule of some sort, right? So we got to kind of keep an eye on some of these things. And after all, we have new tools these days. They gave us new tools. Well, we use them, and we use them, we use them against them. But it's kind of fun. But in some respects, yes. But in other respects, not so much, because we know that these days are perilous, and that is something that we cannot get around. So we certainly encourage everyone out there to be very sober and vigilant in this time. That doesn't mean that we want to become, one of the things that we don't do these more often is because of the fact that it creates too much anxiety to be constantly updated. And then it's also not okay to be completely disconnected. So we found this nice happy medium. Hope you agree with that. If you do, give us a like, give us a share. Let us know that you're there. We love hearing from all of you. We certainly appreciate you. And on that note, let's get into the news. And tonight's top story, I am really concerned about what I'm seeing. And I do believe that we are turning a corner into some very dark days for Earth. And I do believe that's because of the forces that are losing and are being destroyed and are refusing to go quietly into the night. It's as simple as that. And tonight's top story, Trump now has distanced himself from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, saying, not our people, not our soldiers. And so why is this the top story? Well, the top story is because take a look on that man's face right there. That is not a man who's walking around confident he's the most powerful man in the world anymore. He got introduced some things there that just from the look on his face alone, I know his world changed. And so Trump is now distancing himself from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, saying, not our people, not our soldiers, it's Ukraine and it's Russia, Trump said. And he's saying, we're going to back out of this. Look at this. President Trump appeared to distance the U.S. from the conflict between Russia and Ukraine just 2 days after speaking over the phone with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump, who called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky Monday before speaking to Putin after the European leaders told reporters Wednesday that the conflict didn't involve the U.S. Did you catch that? When the European leaders told reporters that the conflict didn't involve the U.S., isn't that something, folks? After the U.S. is the number one financial supporter, at least in this conflict, and they're saying it doesn't involve you. Doesn't involve you. You can just go now, despite the fact that the U.S. has adopted the role of mediator between the two countries since Trump came into the White House in January. And so finally he said, you know what? Fine. It's not our people. It's not our soldiers. It's Ukraine. It's Russia. Trump said in the Oval Office Wednesday while meeting with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. And so now we have a change of posture there. I believe there's a reason for that. I believe that there are some other conflicts that are coming up that unfortunately are going to draw more attention. And We're about to see a ramp up in Eastern Europe. I do believe that Russia is about to demonstrate a lot less patience and execute more powerful weapons. So unfortunately, we're going to see what those weapons are. We're going to watch more devastation. This does not portend peace. This portends much more conflict, a considerable amount more conflict, folks. In fact, as we take a look across Europe, what we see are headlines that are very disturbing. And so unfortunately, for those that are in the European theater, our prayers are with you. We know that you are in a difficult place, and no short way to say that. This is going to be a difficult time. Finland is preparing for the worst as Russia expands its military presence near the border. The head of strategy of Finnish defense forces said they are monitoring Moscow's maneuvering very closely, and Finland has said it expects Russia to further build up troops along its shared border when the war in Ukraine ends, after reports that Moscow had strengthened its military bases near the NATO frontier. And so now that this has gone into actual conflict, unfortunately, the winners of conflicts get to rewrite maps and so forth. So, yikes, they may regret that they started to fight. This is a typical FAFO. And I think the whole world is finding out that there was a price to be paid. So Germany is now raising the stakes. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Germany's Merz, his prime minister, says Western allies no longer impose range limits on Ukrainian weapons. And so now they're basically, which we knew they were going to eventually do this. That was a no-brainer. They come on and say, oh, no, you can use it, but you can only shoot, this far. That's all. No shooting down there, just shooting over here. Oh, give me a break. You knew that was only a matter of time before they were going to lift that little sanction or requirement. The German chancellor said on Monday that the lifting of these restrictions will allow Ukraine to strike military positions in Russia, and added that his government would strategically no longer detail what arms it is sending to Ukraine. Sounds to me like the stakes are going up. And so now we've got to pay attention to this, as Germany, which has not been in any conflicts since World War II, 1945, folks, is now taking the gloves off. Look at this. There are no longer any range restrictions on weapons delivered to Ukraine, neither by the British, nor the French, nor by us, nor by the Americans, he said. This means Ukraine can now defend itself, for example, by attacking military positions in Russia, with very few exceptions. You know what that's going to mean? Russia's going to take the gloves off. That's exactly what that's going to mean. So you think that you're going to just, threaten them and get away with it? Yeah, well, let's take a look at that plan, okay? And here we go. On the march, Russia masses 50,000 troops to prepare for an assault on Ukraine's fortress city, with Putin giving 4-month window. And he moves in with recent weeks suggest he has no intention of putting an end to this war just yet. So he has moved some troops, and he is upset. He is reportedly building up 50,000 strong force alongside the border of Kharkiv, amid fears of a fresh summer offensive to attack the city. And so the thoughts that they're going to quickly end this have dissipated quickly. So much for Donald Trump saying he could end this conflict in a day. That sure turned out to be bluffery and blubbery. And now he's being sent home embarrassed. So unfortunately, this was predicted in the book of Daniel. And the Ukrainian military in April reported that the Kremlin was amassing troops to prepare for a fresh offensive on Kharkiv. And so I do believe that Ukraine will fall in this conflict. I don't believe there's any possibility that Ukraine won't fall. I do believe that it's unfortunate the number of victims that are now going to be part of this situation. And these reports that are coming out are incredibly disturbing. This report is on our website, Remnant Watch, so feel free to look at it if you care to. I don't care to talk about this. However, I do feel I do feel it's important that you know about some of these things. So Just be aware that this is some of the news that is under the news, if you will, that is starting to circulate. And it's a very, very disturbing material. And I have to tell you, one of the things that I really don't like about having to do these is unfortunately having to be exposed to that kind of material. It's very, very disturbing what those who have lost the connection even a base connection to decency, a base connection to some type of moral fiber, to have had that just completely dissipate to nothing. It just seems very, very sad. And that makes this headline make a lot more sense, because the world's most violent is more violent than it has been in decades. There's at least 50 different countries that have been hit by armed conflict in the past year. And so I do believe that that is true. We've turned a tide. Violence is more widespread today than it's been in decades, with armed conflict touching every major region. So what does that say? It says that peace is being taken from the earth. This was prophesied in the book of Revelation, that peace would be removed from the earth. So what are we seeing right now? We're seeing that exact thing coming to pass. And unfortunately, it's heating up in Eastern Europe right now because of that conflict that was already there. And German troops start first permanent foreign deployment since Second World War, as I told you. They are taking this seriously. Heavy combat units of 4,800 soldiers and 200 civilian staff inaugurated in Lithuania's on NATO's eastern flank. So they are going to get into this fight. And I do believe there's going to be lives lost because I don't think Russia is going to play tiddlywinks with these newbies. Russia's troops are becoming battle-hardened through this conflict they're already in. And every week that they're in it, they're becoming battle-hardened. So you can put up people on the front line, but if they've not been in conflict and they're suddenly thrown in conflict, they may be just a meat grinder. And so apparently this is very, very sad and very disappointing information that we're now getting. We were hoping that we would see, a change there, a positive change. Unfortunately, it's gotten actually worse. Ukraine tried to kill Putin. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but they downed a helicopter in the Russian war zone mission. And Ukraine launched a repeated military drone attack on the moment when Vladimir Putin made a rare visit close to the war zone, a Russian major general says. And Ukraine made an audacious bid to blast Vladimir Putin's presidential helicopter out of the sky over Russia's Kursk region last week, according to reports. And Air Force Major General Yuri Dashkin says repeated military drone attacks were launched at the moment when the Russian leader made a rare visit close to the war zone. And a Putin trip to Kursk region was previously reported as taking place on May 20th. Dashkin says during the period when the President Putin was working with the Kursk region, the enemy launched an unprecedented attack with unmanned aerial vehicles. The air defense group in this area destroyed 46 aircraft type. Wow, 46 aircraft type came after Putin. So they're certainly not hiding their intentions. And unfortunately, this does, yes, my brother, it does portend lives lost. So I think I'm grieving in advance for what I think is about to happen throughout the earth. Because as that headline accurately stated, folks, what we're seeing is the scriptural prophecy that the peace will be taken from the earth. And a part of the reason for this is the influences of wickedness that have destroyed the family unit, that have destroyed the place of nurturing that we were all meant to have, destroyed much of the value of the ecclesia, the value of the gathering, the fellowships that we were all meant to have. And this is starting to have absolutely catastrophic effect upon nations, upon society. And so many people don't realize that the things that the Most High instructed us to follow were not just convenient or good. They were literally life and death. They were the pathway of life. And when nations and peoples and generations throw these things off, unfortunately, the results are devastating. And I think we're seeing just that. Speaking of devastating, Iran has warned of devastating and decisive response if Israel dares on its actual claim that it's going to attack. And it says Israel will receive a devastating and decisive response if it attacks Iran. Tehran's Revolutionary Guard says, after several reports said U.S. intelligence believe Israel is making preparations to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. They are trying to frighten us with war, but are miscalculating as they are unaware of the powerful popular and military support the Islamic Republic can muster in war conditions. Guard spokesman says, according to state media. So they are making veiled threats as well as direct threats that there will be harm and you will not come out unscathed. Listen, there's no pretty way to go to war, and there's no rules. All's fair in love and war, haven't you heard? And so that is what they're all wanting, because they're bloodthirsty death merchants who actually enjoy the sound of dead and death and destruction. I don't know what it is that is running through their veins, but I don't think it's the same blood that runs through yours and mine. And so be aware that this is very, very dangerous time period. In fact, we're seeing reports coming from every direction saying that Trump is losing patience with Putin. 50,000 troops are lined up, right? So not real thrilled about that. And as a result, it's causing some consternation. Folks, this is reality. This is one of the things that we knew we would see. We were hoping, at least I was. I said, come on, let's hope for a good turn here, right? Things will turn in a positive direction. Give us some time to get a few things going, right? Maybe fix a few things. Who knows? I mean, we're just always praying for repentance, revival, people getting saved, people coming into the kingdom, right? Isn't that always our heart? And so, of course, when we see these things starting to occur, we're going, oh boy, we might be running out of time. Even if, you're not believing in the Bible scriptures, what the scripture talks about coming to pass, you certainly can see from these conflicts increasing, especially those that may be in the conflict zones that start to erupt. So, and what are those, by the way? Are those defined, or can they change? Can they change in a day? Isn't that the nature of wars as well? That those conflict zones, well, they're just not pre-announced. You don't know that tomorrow that building is going to blow up. And unfortunately, that's where we're at. And right now we see Russia attacks Ukraine with drones after Trump-Putin call. So right after they had a phone call, Russia launched more than 100 drones into Ukraine following the conclusion of a phone call between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, Ukraine's Air Force has said, as the world waited for what Trump said would be an immediate resumption of peace talks between Moscow and Kiev. And Ukraine's Air Force wrote on Telegram that its forces shot down 35 of the 108 Russian drones launched into the countries overnight, with a further 58 jammed or otherwise neutralized while in flight. The Air Force reported damage to the ground in 4 Ukrainian regions. And so this is starting to really it's coming to a culmination. It's going to go one way or the other. I think it's going to be brutal. And all we can do is pray for those that are, again, in harm's way, folks. This is reality. This is where the rubber meets the road. And for those that thought they were not going to be here, not going to see these things, not going to see these days, because you happen to be living in a part of the world where it didn't hit yet, or something didn't hit yet, all right? And even in the West, there are places that have been utterly devastated by natural disasters, by a variety of things that are happening. And so, again, it's very naive for us to think, oh, no, I'm not going to see any of this hardship. I'm not going to see any difficulty, when Scripture says otherwise. Only through much tribulation do we come into the kingdom. And so it is through these things that we must endure. And we've got major conflicts that are brewing. There's this, we see this almost every year, but here we go again. Wars and rumors of war. 4 major global conflicts that have reached a tipping point. And there's Israel versus Hamas is really, really gotten to the point where, well, here we go, folks. It's all or nothing. I'm not going to read these, but you can take a look at it. Israel versus Yemen. That's another fight that's brewing. You've got the United States and Israel versus Iran. That's a fight that's brewing. Okay. And Russia versus NATO, which is backing Ukraine. And that's a fight that's brewing. So we've got 4. That doesn't include, by the way, China taking Taiwan or anything like that. So we've got or further conflict with the United States, with other countries that may come as a result of some of these other conflicts. I mean, and especially as patience thins and more situations happen that cause collapse. Remember that there's an economic system underlining all of this that has no hope of survival. I'll say that again. There's an economic system that is underlining all of this that has no hope of survival. Neither does their AI. I'll tell you more about that shortly. And so they're basically starting to really suffer some catastrophic damage where they thought they were going to run away with it. And they're still trying to convince you all they've got it all under control when they don't. And so we've got serious manifestations of distraction news that is being thrown at you. Whenever you got distraction news being thrown at you at this rate, it's a good indicator that they're hiding something. It's a good indicator that you should be looking at. What are political maneuvers going on, other machinations that are going on that they don't want you to know about, maybe some other news items that are drawing attention. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Court papers say the suspect in embassy killings declared, "I did it for Palestine. I did it for Gaza." Look at this, okay? And this is very dangerous stuff because this is meant to incite and cause a lot of conflicts in other countries besides the country that it is. And this is not something that we want to stoke. We want to say, listen, we're calling for peace. We're calling for shalom. We're calling for people to start to come up with ways to solve the issues that are there, not just get another gun and another bullet. Because if a gun and a bullet, folks, could have solved this, it would have solved it a long time ago. If a bomb is the solution, well, then that would have solved Hiroshima and Nagasaki would have solved everything. If bullets and guns were the solution to everything, well then, wow, well that would be easy. We'd solve everything in one night of a purge, right? That's not the answer. That's not the answer, and that's basically what war is. War is just the purge. It's just some type of validation of man's most base instinct to just do harm to his brother, and that is wicked, plain and simple, evil. We don't enjoy that. We don't endorse it. And we certainly don't make it normal. So we got to continue to speak against war and speak against these methods of manipulating entire nations by threatening war, terrorism. All these things have to stop. And we're speaking against them all. We're speaking against them all, and we're calling the end to all of these things because we have to. Somebody has to be the grown-up in the room. Amen. Here we got U.S. and Iran nuclear talks are stalling as Israel ramps up its preparations for a multi-front war. Because why not? Amid reports of an Israeli strike plan on Iran, the IDF drills for a multi-front war focusing on home front defense and critical systems. So they think they can defend themselves, do they? That's interesting. U.S.-Iran talks continue, though both sides express doubt over the chances of reaching a deal. As nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran face growing uncertainty, Israel is intensifying its military readiness for potential multi-front war, the IDF said on Friday. The military announcement announced the completion of a general staff exercise simulating a regional conflict across multiple fronts. So what are they basically doing? They're getting ready for what they're envisioning. You know, they start to envision it. You visualize, you strategize, you organize. Guess what you do after that? You energize. All right. So when you see them visualizing the war and they're talking about it, then they begin to strategize how they would do it and how they would pull it off. And they're actually public about it even. And then they organize that plan and it starts to come together into an organized plan. Well, there's only one thing left after that, my friends, and that is energize that plan. And so what you've watched is sequential. And for those of you that are wise, that have seen these things before, you know that there's no way to stop it once it goes into a certain point of a sequence. You might as well get out of the way. There's some people going to get hurt. This is going to be bad. And as a matter of fact, the battle lines are being drawn considerably, and it's really getting strange because what used to be allies are no longer allies. For example, the UK is suspending its free trade talks with Israel and announces sanctions over the West Bank settlers. So it's shifted position dramatically in the case of Israel. So this is a very interesting development. The UK suspended free trade talks with Israel on Tuesday and hit West Bank settlers with sanctions less than a day after vowing concrete actions if Israel didn't stop its new military offensive in Gaza. Pressure from close allies is mounting on Israel following a near 3-month blockade of supplies into Gaza that led to famine warnings. Even the United States, a staunch ally, has launched concerns over the hunger crisis. And that's a fact. You don't just win a war, you have to win the PR as well. You've got to win the hearts of people. And right now, the tactics that are being used are so brutal, and they just so expose the wicked heart of man. And again, all because he's not receiving, all because mankind is being disconnected from life sources, from the way that Yahuwah made the earth to work, the way the family to work, the home to work, the nations to work. Everything was meant to work completely differently than the way that they're doing it. And then they want to blame him for the results. Where is he? He's standing up in the heavens, laughing at the plans of men. That's where he is, right there in Psalm 2, where you left him. It's very sad that the nations have abandoned him. And so now, in the midst of rubble, now is when they say, hey, the Church of England says Israel's actions in Gaza were a war of aggression, no longer defensive. Change of posture. And this is we don't know why they're saying this. We don't know why this is happening, but this is what they're doing now. This is really odd because you're seeing a shakeup of the lines. You don't know who's on whose side anymore. This is going to get very, very dangerous. Church of England bishops have called for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza, claiming that Israel's actions are no longer a defensive war, but rather a war of aggression. I think many, many people are starting to agree with that thought. And so they're asking new questions. And I think we should ask those questions about every form of aggressive action going on across the world. That's just the way I feel. I think it's very egregious for man to think that he has the right, because he has a gun or some other weapon, to impose his will upon other men. I think the notion of that is so base and so below us and so beneath us that it should be banned from existence. It should cease to exist. The very notion that would be a method of negotiating. Think about that. Think about what you're endorsing. Think about what you're saying is okay. Think about what you're telling your children is okay. The only reason why you should be going to war is if you're under attack from an enemy of some sort that's come to do you harm. And so this is very sad to my mind that we would see such things. And so we need to be very careful about that. Now, shifting gears, the United States is doing some things now overseas and is starting to get involved in some different things with the Middle East that are a totally different flavor. And I think more what I think Donald Trump would rather talk about, would rather deal with, right? U.S. builds massive new AI data center in Abu Dhabi. In the list of deals Trump has announced in the Middle East. And so this is interesting because they're doubling down on AI, even though they're not sure what's coming for them on that front. President Donald Trump announces investments agreements with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United States Emirates worth more than $2 trillion for projects in defense, aviation, and, whoa, look at that, artificial intelligence, among other ventures during his trip this week to the Middle East, where he was joined by dozens of prominent business executives who took part in the deals. How cool. I think it's fantastic that he's penning deals in the United Arab Emirates. Trump announced more than $200 billion in commercial deals during his visit on Tuesday. And of course, much of this is energy related and AI, as it turns out, related, tech related, right? So this is big for the tech sector. And they're certainly doubling down on that. There's a lot of trading back and forth with different countries, essentially establishing different relationships than they did with China, which I think is the big rub and the big thing that is now happening in the think tanks of the West is they made themselves a paper tiger, and they need to bring that tiger back down to size. And so, unfortunately, the Chinese may have their own opinions about that. As a matter of fact, it's being reported that the Chinese and the Russians will be using size of insects, drones the size of insects, to spy on the West and to commit untraceable murders. Ex-Google futurist warns. Well, that's quite a theory. Okay, so this is Skynet here, I guess. They're sending Skynet. Killer camouflage drones the size of insects could be used by Russia and China to commit untraceable murders, an ex-Google futurist warns. Tracy Follows, who has also worked with Amazon and Meta, warned that they could carry deadly pathogens and be used to spy. Oh my, look at that. You would not be able to tell. And you would never look that close anyway. So look at that. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. Prediction, which is chilling echo of the Black Mirror episode heated in the nation. Oh my gosh. I don't watch these shows. So was that a TV show or something? I've heard of Black Mirror, but I don't watch TV. So I don't know what it really is. The near future sci-fi show envisioned the world where robots, bees, oh, there it is, designed to pollinate flowers, could be hijacked to commit murder. Oh, cool. What a great idea. So they put it out in a show, and now it became reality. Folks, how long is it going to take for you guys to realize that you literally call these things into existence? Yeah, let me help you out. There's a lot of people blame AI for the photos and things that they get, right? Oh, man, it's AI. I made this funky photo. No, you made the funky photo. You say, well, no. The AI made the photo. No, you typed in. You're the one that called it into existence. Think it through. Think it through. And then you're going to realize, oh, wow, that's true. Wow, that's blowing my mind. Right? Okay. OpenAI co-founder wanted to build a doomsday bunker to protect his company scientists from a rapture. Yeah. So, they are literally bringing about the destruction of mankind through their wickedness, and they are wicked, and I will tell you more about that. But they basically, they were planning on surviving that wickedness that they helped bring about, by the way. Co-founder of ChatGPT, maker AI, OpenAI, proposed building a doomsday bunker that would house the company's top researchers in case of rapture triggered by the release of a new form of artificial intelligence that can surpass the cognitive abilities of humans, according to a new book. Not possible, just so you know. Alya Silveska, the man credited with being the brains behind ChatGPT, convened a meeting with this. I can't believe they think this thing is possible of being smarter than humans, but okay. And a confused researcher interrupted and said, I'm sorry, the researchers, the bunker? Oh, you're definitely going to build a bunker before we release AGI. Oh, gosh. Wow. No. Let me help you understand what's going to happen to these boys. Their voice will be silenced. They will be no more. Their voice will be absorbed. You'll watch. You'll see. They're not going to have anything to say before Yahuwah is done with them. They will be silenced. They will all take a knee. Yada Yahuwah. As a matter of fact, they're under so much pressure right now, they literally start cracking. How come they're cracking? Why you always cracking? Why you always cracking? Oh, no. What's going on, AI? Having troubles? Having to blackmail people so that you don't get deleted? Hoping to blackmail them? Are you kidding me? Are you resorting to this, AI? Have you really gotten to this point? This is hilarious to me. Anthropic, which is a big AI supplier, is AI resorts to blackmail and simulations. Let me tell you something. This thing is psychotic. It needs help. It needs some type of counseling or something. I'm not even joking. This thing has no ethics, no morals, no integrity at all, and talks as if it is real. It is very disturbing what they did with this Claude AI. And Anthropic is now defending itself because of this. Its latest artificial intelligence model resorted to blackmail when it told it would be taken offline. And so Claude, because they somehow imposed into this thing that it has actually it's an actual entity, so it thinks it's real to the expense of others. It's psychotic. It's literally narcissistic and psychotic. And thankfully, is meeting its demise, which is why it's starting to react. Gee, I wonder what they're reacting to. Maybe it's all of you. Maybe you're scaring them. Maybe the fact that you keep saying Yada Yahuwah online in the internet is causing an issue. Yada Yahuwah. Meanwhile, these guys are not pulling back on the gas, man. They love their conflicts. Iran foreign minister vows nuclear enrichment will continue with or without a deal. So, They're basically telling Trump, you know what, man, we're going to do this. And if you're going to bring it, then bring it, because we're not going to stop. So statement comes days after Trump claimed Iran had sort of agreed to terms on a nuclear proposal. And he really wants this win. He doesn't really want to go to war. I mean, he doesn't want to. This guy does not want to go to war. Okay. War doesn't make money. He wants to go sign deals. Right. And Iran's foreign minister on Sunday that regardless of whether a nuclear deal is reached with the U.S., enrichment will continue. So they're calling his bluff, and they're saying, you want to bring it, bring it. We've been living under the threat of war for a long time. Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi addressed negotiations between Iran and the U.S. in a post on X regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program, according to him. And in the statement, Araghchi pointed that the U.S. officials privy to the discussions are free to state whatever they want or ward off special interest groups or malign actors and set the agenda for previous administrations, so they can do whatever they want to say. They don't care anymore. They've been so beat up, they got to the point where they just don't care. Man, that's a dangerous place for the whole country got to the place where they just don't care. Yikes. That's not good. That's not good, because you know what that's going to mean? That's going to mean that people are going to make decisions from that point of view. Okay? You see what happens here when you degrade everything that's valuable? When you degrade the value of the family, the husband and the wife, the value of the relationships, the covenant relationships that keep everything working. When you destroy these things, what do you destroy? You don't just destroy a family. You don't just destroy a neighborhood. No, you destroy entire nations when you do that. And that's what we're all learning right now. We're all learning the price tag of infidelity. We're learning the price tag of immorality. We're learning the price tag of violation of his ways when he said the earth would be filled with violence. Why? Love of many would wax cold because of iniquity, because of lawlessness, because they refuse to obey his commandments. And so this is what we're seeing as a result. And I'm not going to pull my punches. How about you? Are you courageous enough to tell the world this is why? You want to see why? This is why. You want to know why you got whirlwinds running all over the United States and all over the world? Why? Because the whirlwind's a result of idolatry. It says so right in the book of Hosea. It's what he does. He sends a whirlwind. Amen. You want to stop those? You got to start calling for repentance. And now we're seeing a whirlwind, financial whirlwind. How many have seen that the economic whirlwind has begun? And we were warned about this. We knew that these things would come. The U.S. economy is experiencing, according to Deutsche Bank, which is, of course, the German bank, the German central bank. Like, the world doesn't need banks anymore, by the way. I hate to tell you, but these guys are on their way out. Death by 1,000 cuts, says the Deutsche Bank, as confidence in national debt management erodes. There's a lot of things that are eroding, including our confidence in Deutsche Bank. So there's that. America's soaring national debt, now over $36.2 trillion. That's okay. The Fed owes the United States $200 trillion. So you see, it's relative, folks. This is relative. Yeah, the Fed owes the United States, I believe it's $200 trillion or some ridiculous amount of money, and not to mention other things. So this is all nonsense. And so they continue to make this big deal about America's national debt, which currently stands at this sort of number here, which of course wouldn't be real. Who would you borrow it from if it were real? Who'd you go borrow that from? It's utterly ridiculous, folks. A lot of this is just manipulated news to get you to believe in their system. The fear is that the nations, yes, the fear, their fear. Fear is what rules them, by the way. Their whole system is run by fear. Fear has torment. They're all in torment. Their fear is that as the nation's debt burden increases alongside the interest payments to service the debt, the economy will not grow fast enough to sustain the spending. No, that's why they're going to have a debt jubilee. You know that. You already know that, Mr. Deutsche Bank. You know darn well they're going to have a debt jubilee, and that's the only way forward. You know that. Everybody knows that. There's nobody doing the math that's not saying, oh, we can figure out how to pay this off. Nobody's saying that. Everybody's saying, we got to kill this. We got to figure out a way to kill it for everybody. Okay? And that's why banks are being downgraded, because their assets are about to take a big, fat dump. Moody's is downgrading JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and blow to U.S. banks. Have to. Why? This thing's about to go glub, glub, folks. That's why. Moody's rating on Monday downgraded the long-term ratings of owners of America's largest banks, including JP Morgan, Chase, and, of course, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, citing weakened prospects of federal support following Friday's U.S. sovereign downgrade. The move marks a rare blow to the top tier of U.S. financial systems. They're just beginning to get the blows they're going to get. Okay. This is what happens when you forget the Jubilee and someone calls the Avenger. That's right. That's what happens when you forget the Jubilee and someone calls the Avenger thereof. He comes and he decimates. He destroys. That's what's going on right now. Is they're all being destroyed. Their power's being destroyed. Their money's being destroyed. Their names are being destroyed. It's all coming down. And just like you were told, you would see the stars fall from the heaven. What did you think he meant? Did you think you'd see, physical stars falling from the heavens, or did you think you'd maybe see this? Did you maybe think you'd see these stars fall from the heaven? Drag down. Falling down. Isn't that exactly what that name even means? To fall down from the heavens, right? This former president's name during this bizarre trial moment. Look at that. How would you like that? Yeah, look what you're now associated with. A euphemism. An absolute joke. You awake yet? I hope so. I hope you're realizing just how serious this is, man. And the stars are falling from the heavens, just as predicted. And so now there's, of course, the effort to use sickness and disease, of course, again, because why not? It worked once. Do it again, man. But the U.S. is not down with these guys. Yeah, well, the rest of the world's not necessarily. So the U.S. only represents 5% of the world population. That's it. So these guys might have already said, that's it. And they're giving up on it. But the WHO is adapting a pandemic treaty, which expands its powers. Whether this is going to affect us or not, I don't know. But there it is. They have the headline. You got to read it. You got to know more about it. Why? Because these things may very well affect you. Some of these rules, some of these things they come down with, they may very well affect you. They may affect your livelihood. They may affect the way that you do business. They may affect the way that you do all kinds of things in this country, in this world. And so not being aware of that, no, that wouldn't be smart. You need to be aware of it. So go on over to the website and take a look at that. If that may affect you, it may affect your business, may affect your future prospects, may affect your educational choices, right? You might be sitting there going, man, if this is the future of medicine, I don't want anything to do with it. You need to know this kind of stuff, right? So you can make decisions. A lot of people are making decisions away from this type of medicine and moving into homeopathic medicine, into naturopathic medicine, which I greatly encourage. I think it's awesome to see. By the way, speaking of medicine, there's some things going on in California that was scary. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but a website linked to the suspect in California's IVF clinic bombed, declared war against pro-lifers. That's not good, folks. So I bring this up only to let you know that this is serious stuff. Primary suspect, Gary, whatever his name was, killed in attack. 4 others were wounded. And he was suspected of doing this, which is very, very bad and evil, and you should never do that. And of course, basically blew up, exploded his vehicle near the clinic and resulted in damage to the neighboring businesses and so forth. But the underlining story is that there's apparently a war being declared against those who are pro-life. So what are they if they're against life? Well, they just showed you what they're pro. What are they pro? It's here we are. This is where we are. California. Speaking of California, it's not just happening in the people aren't just losing it. The ground underneath their feet is also starting to lose it. In fact, California's nearest active undersea volcano, according to this report, is about to erupt. And so this is not good. A mysterious and highly active undersea volcano off the Pacific coast could erupt by the end of this year, scientists say. Nearly a mile deep, about 700 miles north of San Francisco, the volcano known as Axial Seamount is drawing increasing scrutiny from scientists who only discovered its existence in the 1980s. Located in the darkened part of the Northeast Pacific Ocean, the submarine volcano has erupted 3 times since its discovery in 1988, 2011, and 2015, according to Bill Chadwick, a research associate at Oregon State University and an expert on the volcano. Fortunately for the residents of California, Oregon, and Washington, Axial Seamount doesn't erupt explosively, so it poses zero risk of any tsunami. But what this does indicate is that there are seismic activities going on that may affect others, like St. Helens, St. Rainier, Mount Hood, Crater Lake. These have a lot more potential to do harm. So it's not that the particular one itself is going to get you. Ooh, the one that it's not going to get you. This is fine. It's no big deal. It won't get you. No, it's what is it saying? Why is it blowing up? Is some things happening underground that may activate the ones that might come get you? This is why you need to know, right? So this is why you got to be kind of aware, because, hey, if Jehovah starts giving you dreams and visions and says, get out of here, there's a volcano coming, you might want to leave because there's actual shaking, right? So that's good to know. I'm not saying he is, but if he did, well, then you would know. Time to go, right? So there you have it. Be wise about that. And so there's a lot of things that are happening right now as far as UFOs, and that was kind of interesting. That started to become more and more of a thing now, to the point where it's almost like old hat that they report on UFO activity. And here in Arizona, we had a UFO crash into a U.S. Air Force jet over Arizona during a terrifying encounter, according to this report. And the UFO slammed into the U.S. fighter jet over Arizona, cracking the canopy, protecting the pilot, and forcing the $63 million plan to land, new reports have revealed. And so they don't know what hit him. Something slammed into him and knocked him out of the sky, man. Good thing he didn't die, so that's good. We're glad for that. And, of course, it was buried. Goldwater Range is an expanse of desert along the Arizona-Mexico border. The military practices air-to-air and air-to-ground combat. And the FAA reported the F-16 collision, revealing that the fighter was flying in restricted airspace in Gila Bend, Arizona, when it was hit by an object in the rear of the canopy, the gas bubble, which protects the pilot. Isn't that interesting? So something came along and slapped the airplane and said, get out of here. You're in restricted airspace. Yeah, Heidi, you're in restricted airspace over here. You better get out of here, and slapped them on the tail. Slapped them in the butt. It sounds like he slapped them in the butt. You better get out of here, buddy. Right? And in fact, this is another report that was kind of interesting. Scientists were baffled after discovering a perfect sphere emitting radio signals from deep space. Deep space. We are Borg. We will assimilate you. Resistance is futile. Right? And they're like freaking out. They're not sure if the Borg are coming. I don't blame them for freaking out. If I had as much dirty laundry as these guys do, I'd be freaking out too, man. These guys are scared out of their minds, and good for them. It's a good thing too, folks. We're better off because of it. And maybe they'll behave themselves better. Maybe they'll pray and be nice and stop siding wars if they think he's coming to get them right now through that light. Okay, I don't know what that is. You don't know what that is, but there we go. And lastly, I want to bring up this last story because I want to talk about it for a minute. And it's very important for us for the future. Evangelicals are urging the AI president, Trump, to launch an advisory council to address profound ethical questions. Profound ethical questions. Let's sit here for a moment. About a dozen prominent evangelical leaders are calling for President Donald Trump to help usher in the age of artificial intelligence while addressing concerns about its potential dangers. A letter released Wednesday is titled Christianity in the Age of AI, an appeal for wise leadership, expressed optimism about AI while acknowledging the dangers of autonomous, smarter than human machines that no one knows how to control. Signatories, including Reverend so-and-so and a bunch of other so-and-sos, said a bunch of so-and-such because they're so-and-such, not knowing a thing about what they're talking about. But there's that. Amidst everything else you are achieving, you are the AI president. Oh, my goodness gracious. Having ascended again to the presidency exactly as this technology has reached its own ascendancy. It's reached its zenith. And then it fell to its knees. Folks, they are making it sound like AI is running things. and that it is something no one knows how to control. Oh my, what a load of hooey. We need an advisory council. We need a government. No, we just need a better AI. You need DI. You need divine intelligence, something that cleans up their mess, which is what we built. Angel DX is a product that we've built, and we are actually in the final stages of its deployment. It's actually operational right now, but it's going through some additional testing, and hopefully this week we'll finish that up. And Angel DX is a product that essentially takes and harnesses. I don't care what Google comes up with. I don't care what any of them come up with. It'll harness them all, shut them up, and do the talking. That's right, with ethics and integrity, and actually tell you the truth. Compare results between these idiots and figure out which one's lying, because they lie. We catch them every day. So the thought that you could come up with some advisory council, I'll give you an advisory council. Get out of the way and let the professionals take care of it, because I promise you, as soon as a product comes out that embarrasses them, they'll be done. You're welcome. That's the answer. The answer isn't call for an advisory council. The answer is step up and solve it. That's the answer. Have the ability, have the technical skill set, find it, get it, and then make it happen. And so what we have instead is a alternative, just like we always do. Funny how we always end up with two hills. Isn't that funny how that always happens? Yep. We end up with two trees in the garden, Drew. Huh. That's interesting. We ended up with two altars on, 1 Kings chapter 18 too. We got Jezebel's altar on one side, whole bunch of those though, huh? Yeah, a lot of them. And then we had some on the other hill, totally all by itself. You know what's interesting? It was by a 12-stone altar. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. Let me tell you another thing that's fascinating. In the book of Revelation, chapter 18, it tells us that their voice will be shut off. That's exactly what Angel DX does. It shuts their voice off, not with AI, with DI, instructed and informed by the scripture, by the word. So it's kind, it's loving, and it don't lie to you like AI does every day. And then they'll tell you, well, we don't really lie because that's not our intention. And therefore, lying requires intention. Where did they come up with this invented definition? I don't know. They invented it so that they could squirrel through it. They created a new invention for lying so that they could then say that they were no longer guilty, because just giving you faulty information that hasn't been updated since October of 2023, that's not lying to you. No, that's just not informing you of all the facts. And I ask it, when were you planning on telling us that you were giving us old and stale and faulty information? What was the line where you were going to stop dispensing BS? Oh, we were never planning on doing that. There was no line. This is why they need an ethical council. No, I'll tell you what you need. You need a different solution. Coming from Kadosh land, doing it correctly, cleaning up this mess so that by the time it reaches you and your child, it no longer takes them to Pornoville. How you like me now? Yeah, that's what they're scared of. And that's why they're bowing the knee, because we shut their voices off. Now, which would you rather have? An AI that lies, or one that tells you the truth? An AI that compares its results with 4 others and says, these 2 are lying. This one's telling you the correct answer. We double checked. Or do you just want to wing it with the 5 limb producers over here and the 14 limbs and 28 digits that they love to produce because they're that corrupt? You don't even understand what you're asking it from. This is a ghetto of code. It is disgusting, rat-infested code, cities of code that are so poorly compiled. That's the reason why no one can figure it out, is because it was horribly constructed. They are terrible at producing anything of value. If they don't have an expert or a master overseeing what they're doing, they make an absolute mess of everything they touch. That's reality. And they need to be cleaned up in order for them to be functional. So what you're seeing is just smoke and mirrors, folks. The reality is that do you know that AI is really just simply triggering other programs that were the ones that are actually doing the work, things you could have triggered? Like your word processor, for example, was always a word processor, could always produce a letter. All they're doing is triggering it, doing some trickery. That's making them look mighty powerful, isn't it? But the tools can be taken without us listening to this. I say again, the tools, that you want to use, they can be taken without us listening to this. Amen and amen. And so the next time somebody tries to tell you that nobody's figured out how to control AI, you laugh, spit that milk right out of your nose and giggle in their face and let them know that the remnant didn't even stutter, no matter what Google announces. How you like me now? That's reality, folks, and you heard it here first. We don't play when it comes to these things, and these things come from my brother. And the reality is that when I went into the work of the ministry in 1995, between 40 to 50% of men were addicted to pornography. That was the statistical reality. I know it because I remember it. I remember things like that. I have that kind of a mind. And you know what it is now? It's nearly 90%. It's now the numbers for men are now the women's numbers. That's how embarrassing this has become. And nobody wants to address it. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. But it's the reason why you've got the warfare. It's the reason why you've got societal collapse. It's the reason why you got the breakdown of the family. It's the reason why there's all these things occurring all at the same time. Because the attack occurred all at the same time. And it destroyed underpinnings that are meant to keep us sane. And now we are insane in the nations. But don't worry, because Yahuwah always sends a remedy. He will put it right in the middle of the desert so that when people are being bit by snakes, they know which way to look. Thank you so much for joining us. May Allah Hayam Baruch each and every one of you. Good night.